Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're still doing pandemic projects. We're still in the month of May. Things are finally starting to loosen up a little bit, but we still need to exercise caution and listen to everything that the authorities are telling us to do, or in some cases not to do. So please listen to them, act accordingly, and we will get through this together. I also wanted to remind you, if you are a first responder, and you don't have time to repair your reel, I am offering during the month of May to repair the reel, your favorite reel, for you at no charge. And if you are one, if you work in a hospital, in a nursing home, in a clinic, in a EMT, or any role, doesn't mean that you have to be a doctor or a nurse. If you are an orderly, a clinician, a hospital administrator, anything that's taking time away from your family and time away from things that you would like to do, such as repair fishing reels or tune new reels up to go fishing, then this is the offer to you. Simply send me the reel, and at no charge I will tune that reel up for you and help you out as you're helping us out. So contact me through the information on my business card at the end of this video, and I will be happy to kind of pay it forward. So today's reel is a SurfMaster. It's the Model 100. It's the short version of the SurfMasters. These were first introduced in early 1940s, and they were manufactured up through about 2000 in various stages and pieces and parts. This one is probably an earlier edition. It has an engraved side plate in it. Not all of those did. And this one actually has the surfcaster in the water with the seagulls as he's casting by there. So we're going to show you how this reel was made, how to take it apart, tune it up, and get it functioning optimally. This reel was sent to me by one of our viewers, Mike, and he asked me, he's told me he bought a series on eBay. You'll see another one come up shortly. And he would just want to make sure that it's tuned up and ready to go. So this one's operating a little sluggish. Chances are it just hasn't been serviced in a while, and that's what we're going to do today. This one also had a plastic spool in it. Plastic spools were ideal for surf casting. They were less weight than the metal spools, and because of that, there was less drag when you went to throw the reel from a casting perspective, and you could get a further cast as a result. So we're going to take it apart, and we'll clean it up. We'll make sure that it's working perfect so that Mike can put them back into use. All right, so you saw me take off the side plate. There's no trick to that. There's a single screw take apart. You turn the screw counterclockwise till it works itself out of the hole in the mounting. A short turn to counterclockwise position will release these pins from the grooves that are in the case. And once that pin pops out, you can just simply remove it. We'll do it again because I was talking about first responders at the time. This is how it locks in. You remove the side plate by turning clockwise until the pin pulls out. You pull it out and then just back it off just a short turn, and that releases your spool plates. So then I can release the spool. And this is an indication that it hasn't been serviced in a while. You have no grease in the bearing, and you have a lot of dirt inside the case. So I just use a WD-40 or equivalent, a penetrating oil, just to kind of act as a little bit of a cleaning agent here. I'll just spray a little bit on. You'll notice as we're doing this that I'm wearing a protective glove on my hand. That's because I don't like to get all that grease and grime and junk and oils on my hand if I can avoid it. You'll also notice that I don't have a glove on my other hand, and as I've mentioned from time to time, I just have a difficulty working with that plastic glove. If you're a first responder, you probably know what we're talking about here, but you're probably better at it than I am. So, okay, so I just cleaned all the dirt out of that channel there. I'm going to grab a brush and some fishing reel grease. In this case, I'm going to use Penn Precision Reel Grease. It's available online for those of you that want to get some. I always recommend using a fishing reel grease for your servicing. You know, it's real easy to grab some common household grease, but it's just not going to last as long as a fishing reel grease. So please, take the time, spend a couple of dollars. It's not expensive, and go get yourself fishing reel grease. You don't have to buy a giant tub. They come in in 1 or 2 ounce sizes as well. Okay, so I've just put some lube on the spokes for the spool, lube the inside bearing. Just going to put that back in the case. And one of the things I like to do with these take-apart reels is just make sure that these screws are tight, because if these were used on a boat, the boat vibration often works these loose, and when you have loose, what happens is you start to get frame twist, and that results in either poor performance or scraping of the spool on the side plate. So make sure as you take these off that these internal screws are tightened. Okay, we're going to get down to the servicing of this now. There's 4 bridge plate screws. I'm going to take them out. And as you take them out, you want to notice that the top 2 screws are partially threaded. There's only that 1/8 of an inch or so of threads. The rest is a round, smooth surface. That's because there's springs riding on those, and you want to make sure when you put them back in that you have that set properly. This is an example of why it's running sluggish. You have old grease that's just coagulated and dried on those posts. Now the 2 bottom ones are fully threaded. That's why I mentioned the first part. You'll see that there's a full threading going on there. And again, when you go to reinstall, they belong on the bottom. You'll notice I'm cupping my hand on this reel. That's because there's an anti-reverse dog with a spring that's going to pop. Now, I've got tips from viewers that I like. It says if you're skittish about that and you're afraid that that spring is going to pop, before you do that, put it in the bag, and then you can release, and if that spring does shoot, it's going to shoot into the bag, and you're not going to spend some time looking for that on your bench or on the floor. I've gotten this down pretty much to the point now where I know it's going to land in my hand because I cup all around that and kind of do the same bag thing. All right, when all of them are loose, I think we loosened that last part up. You should be able to just push the bridge through. And there you go. So we've got a very dry, mucky internal set here, and that's why this reel is sluggish. There's 2 types of dog springs. There's a flat spring, which is what this is, and there's a coil spring. If you have the flat spring in your reel is before 1957, because Penn made a conversion over in 1957 and replaced those flat springs with the coil spring. So note to self, if you have that, that's the age of your reel. Okay, I'm just cleaning the junk off of the dog. And these reels shared a lot of parts. The main difference between the 100, the 150, and the 200 was the frame width, not the internal gearing. So if let's say you have a reel you can't find a part for, just go and look at the other 2. If you're buying a parts reel because you need some internal parts, don't be afraid to buy a 150 or 200 to service your 100. The gearing is going to be the same. Okay, I'm just actually on the back, this one's actually stamped the 200 for the jack. Alright, I'm using a piece of steel wool to clean off that old oil. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to hit this thing with some WD-40. Let that sit and loosen it. I'll clean up the yoke here, which is what holds the pinion gear, and it shines up nicely. So you can just see it's not wear in this one. It's just old grease that's been the culprit. Okay, now we're going to take off the main gear. We'll have a look at the washers. These, I'm guessing this is the older style leather washer. Yep, it's the older style leather. As long as they're flexible, they don't need to be replaced. In this case, there's plenty of flex. What happens a lot is sometimes these things dry up and they start to bond to the metal pieces, and all you have to do there is just kind of be easy about it, but get them off. And then we'll do the same thing here on those drag washers. We're just going to use the steel wool to get rid of any of that stuck stuff. And again, it'd be the oils that dried up on it, the greasing. So I use a drag grease, and I have questions from time to time. Can I use the general real grease as opposed to dry grease? And the answer is you can, sure. The dry grease is kind of designed to be a little sturdier, if you will, or last a little bit longer, or whatever those chemical properties are. But you can use general real grease to lubricate the drags. The lubrication doesn't add anything in terms of max drag. It just simply keeps the washers flexible. And here you can see, this is probably the top one. You can just see how much has been dried and accumulated on that. But that'll all come off with a little bit of elbow grease. This one's got some tarnish on it, but tarnish isn't the enemy here. It would be grit and grime and junk. And this was on the top, so the top doesn't come into play at all. We'll just remember that as we put them back together. And then we have a cap washer, same idea. This has got the accumulated grease from time. And you can see it all cleans up pretty easy. This is 4.0 steel wool. It's the least aggressive of the steel wools. It's very fine or ultra fine. I don't know exactly what they call that, but it's an 04 grade, which is the least of the steel wools, and is almost from a polishing perspective as opposed to an abrasive quality to them. All right, so I'm just going to put these in my parts tray for a moment. While I have this out, I'm going to inspect the main gear, make sure that the teeth are not broken, and these look fine, especially for the age. If you think that there's stuff in the channels, use a little wire brush, clean all that out. And what I'm doing here applies to all SurfMasters. I know this one's a 100, but if you have the 100, the 150, or the 200, these are identical. And interestingly enough, if your main gear goes, if your drag washers go, these also share components with the Penn Long Beach series. So you can usually look to those, particularly the washers. The washers would be the same for that series. All right, we have a lot of grease and grime on the bridge, so we want to take the gear sleeve off. And in order to do that, you have to remove the pin that's holding the sleeve in. In this case, it's easy enough for me to poke it out. You can see the pin there coming through. I use a little pick, metal pick, to push that through. And then you can, once that pin clears the groove, you can pull that off, and that was pretty sluggish coming off there. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I've done with a lot of it. I'm going to just kind of puddle up the inside of that gear sleeve with some WD-40. I'm going to come over here and get rid of all of this tarnish, built up residue on the bridge sleeve, or on the bridge itself. And you can see it comes off pretty easily. This is a chromed piece, so it was built to last. And interestingly enough, the model print on here is a 200, right? So even though this model is a 100, it shares the components, as we mentioned, right up through that whole series there. Okay, so we've got all the old grease off of the bridge. We puddled that up in here. I'm going to use a Q-tip to slide underneath here. Make sure that we've cleaned out the inside. And then I'm going to use the real grease to just put a little light lubrication onto the shaft. And we can reinstall the sleeve. It's turning nicely now. There is a hard washer on the bottom here. You don't have to do anything with that hard washer. It keeps the dog from bouncing off. So if you want, you can take it off, but you don't need to do anything with that. Here's your main gear now. We've cleaned that up. We've made sure that there's nothing stuck inside. And now I'm going to switch over. There's a product out there called Cal's Universal Dry Grease. I believe it's made by Okuma, or Okuma at least owns the brand. And we're going to put some dry grease onto the washer, and then I'm going to use my gloved hand as a tool. Another reason why it works. You don't have to worry about getting the stuff on you. Get it worked in. That's what's going to keep the drag washer flexible. That's the top one because it has tarnish. Now you'll notice this one is kind of rectangular in that shape. That's going to grab the two flat sides of the shaft. The middle one has always got a circle in it but two ears on it. That's going to grab the main gear. And between the two of them, that's how this assembly is going to be held together for the drag system. So we're putting the second washer in now. And the eared washer always goes in the middle. And it's almost always followed by another washer. So we'll just get that last one in there. And you can see I haven't slopped it up. There's no excess going on here. If you put any excess on, you're only going to squeeze it out. So don't bother with the over-lubing that. It has no function at all. Probably just to the detriment. I'm just going to wipe that stuff off my fingers now. We've had this thing soaking over here with the dirt, so let's go ahead and grab a cotton swab, just get whatever's left here. And that's about all I can say on this. So when you find eBay, sometimes you're disappointed in what you purchased. And a lot of times you just have folks that are flipping reels, right? They bought it at a garage sale, they bought it at an estate sale, maybe it was their parents, mom or dad's, whatever, and they've never taken care of the reel. They can't tell you what's going on inside of it. Well, check the descriptions on this stuff. Don't be afraid to write a note to the seller on eBay and ask them, is this your personal reel, or are you selling this for somebody else? Do you have experience with this reel? When was the last time it was serviced? And if they're a quality seller, they're going to tell you. They'll tell you exactly what it is. Now, sometimes they'll tell you, yeah, it's my reel. I just decided I don't want to fish the older style reels anymore. I want to move up and go get a Shimano Calcutta or something. And if they're honest with you, sometimes they'll just tell you, look, it's not my reel. I got a collection of these things, and I bought them at a closeout somewhere, and I don't know anything about them. I can't tell you the information, and that's fine. That's why you're purchasing it, because you want to buy a used one. If you don't know the history, it should be reflected in the price or what you're willing to bid on an item, because you're going to have to assume, like Mike did here, that it may need a tune-up, and plan accordingly. But there's nothing wrong with buying a used reel on eBay. Okay, so we put the two springs back in. We're going to put the yoke on. They center over the springs. You press down. And those are the springs where that partially threaded screw, let's not find one. That's where the partially threaded screws are going to go. The spring is going to ride on the shaft here so it doesn't get caught on the threads. All right, up to the installation of the bridge now. So the bridge goes in, and you do a 3/4 of a turn. You have to leave this part open. You want to get the fully threaded screw. And now you'll notice there's a stud here. It might be hard to see on the camera, but there's a stud here. When we go to put the dog in, the dog is going to go over the screw that we just put in. And now the spring is going to line on top of this and wrap around the dog and lay in the case. Easier said than done for me many times. Let's see how we do. Well, I think we got it on the first shot. So it's a little hard to see, but the spring is laying on the top of the dog now, wraps around the stud into the case. Once you do that, you can continue the rotation of that sleeve until the screw lines up with the hole, and you want to make sure that you get your pinion gear through the hole in the bridge. Okay, 1 or 2 turns. You don't want to finish that screw off because this side plate floats, and you want to make sure you get all your screws in and align. So I go northeast, southwest. In this case, I guess I'm going south-north. That was a partially threaded. Here's a fully threaded. That belongs on the bottom on the other side. And then we should have one more, and that's the beauty of the parts tray. If you put all your pieces and parts in the tray, when you go to reinstall, you know where they are. And as many of you have watched my video, from time to time there's an oops moment where you realize that there's a piece laying in that tray that you forgot to put back together. I actually just got a call from a Kay down in Mississippi said I put my reel back together and I got this piece here and it didn't go back in. I don't know where it goes. So we'll try to work through that. Okay, I'm just testing it now. It's working nicely. There's one part that you couldn't lube before you reassembled, and that's the face of the jack. So make sure you get a little bit of grease on that and behind it on the eccentric. That's because that's going to slide against this, and before you put that on, it's hard to do. Alrighty, so now we'll take the gear sleeve. We take the star adjuster. These handles have been cleaned. It's nice. If you needed to clean them, now's a good time to go do that. If we didn't take this gear sleeve off, we would put oil in there now, and that's what Penn has actually designed. This little cap says oil on it. So between servicing, you can pull that little screw there, the handle screw, and you could put some oil in there, but we've got grease in there from the service, so you don't need to do that. Okay, you want to grab a wrench now, and you just want to move it. Tighten that screw down fully, and then make sure you align the indentation in the screw with that hole, otherwise you won't be able to get the lock nut in, or the lock screw. And line that up. Tighten that down. Those of you that know me and know small pieces and parts know that from time to time this becomes an adventure. And I think we're probably on our way to another adventure. There we go. I use an electrician's screwdriver. It's got that little rubber shield on it. That's so you don't spark yourself as you're doing light switches and that, but it's also a nice grip if you have to get micro with these things. All right, we put the grease onto the spool shaft. Everything's greased up, lubed, ready to go back into service. Just reinstall. I did that fast while I was talking, so let's take it out and show you. Just made it in. You've got the screw here, and you have 3 little points. Those points are going into those areas. So look for the screw and the hole in your case. Get it close by, and eventually you just push in, quick turn, tighten down the side plate screw. Now, a lot of times you'll service this reel, and when you come back and servicing, that spool is not as free as it once was. And that's because you put grease into the bearings on both sides. So what you want to do is just back that bearing off a little bit so that you have the slightest amount of play in that. And now you'll have a free spinning spool. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but it's a nice free spool. And he's ready to go fishing again. So here's a nice example of a Penn SurfMaster 100. Mike, you got a nice reel here, or the guy who sold it to you on eBay did you a nice job. All it needed was that varnish cleanup there. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Again, if you're a first responder watching this, don't demean yourself. Don't say, oh, I don't do enough. If you're in the hospital situation, the clinics, the nursing homes, the EMT, the fire, the prisons, the police, any of the support teams that have been putting it out there day in and day out on this coronavirus thing, please, as a service to you, no cost to fix your favorite reel. The business card will follow here, so please take advantage of the offer and send me your reel. If you have a reel that you've been repairing and something's gone amiss, like you left the part in the tray and you don't know where it belongs, shoot me a note. I'll try and help you out with that. If you have a reel that needs to be repaired, but you're not up to the task or you don't have the time to do it, then I do repair reels as part of my business, and I'd be happy to let you know the costs and where to send your reels for repair. That's on the business card as well. And with that, I'm going to wish everybody a great Memorial Day weekend. I hope everybody is staying safe. We will get through this pandemic, and please be safe and be well and respect what we're being told to do. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.